Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line, where we break down the most current business and economic issues of the day. The Serbian economy grew 4.4% in the second quarter of 2024 after posting an even more impressive figure of 4.7% in the first quarter. Are we witnessing an economic miracle on the Danube? Well, to help us understand, let's bring in Magdalena Polan, head of emerging market macroeconomic research belt, to help us understand more about what's been happening in the Serbian economy and its region. Hello, Magdalena. Thank you very much for joining us today on The Bottom Line.
Thank you, and thank you for calling me.
Yes, now the Serbian economy, as we've just previously said, has grown 4.4% in the second quarter of 2024, after growing 4.7% in the first quarter. Taking into account the figures in Europe, of course, or in the CEE region, these are impressive figures. So what is it exactly that's fueling this growth?
Yes, Serbia's story has been quite impressive over the last, let's say, decade or more. There's been quite a turnaround in macroeconomic policies with focus on stability, predictability, and making the country as attractive as possible for foreign investors. Serbia is obviously not a member of the EU, but has started negotiations with the EU. But even without the membership, it enjoys free trade with the EU, similarly to already existing members. That's been very attractive for foreign direct investors who have now placed their factories and also services in the country, hoping not necessarily for a very fast membership path, but that free trade, favorable destination, and also availability of relatively inexpensive but educated workforce.
So Serbia is kind of in a situation where it has its cake and can eat it too, to some extent. Would you say that this situation for Serbia is favorable for economic growth, to be in such a situation where it does enjoy free trade with the European Union, but it also can set its own independent trade policies?
Well, we've seen other countries following something similar. For example, Turkey. It has a free trade union or a customs union with the EU, but of course it's not a member. For a country like Serbia, being rather a small economy and very much inside of Europe, of course being in the EU would unlock additional benefits. And as countries in Central Eastern Europe experience, this is, for example, substantial inflows into infrastructure, into other funds, or also into agricultural sector. And viewers in Poland can only appreciate the benefits brought to the Polish economy. But of course, being outside also gives Serbia a bit more say about its trade policies, because after all, EU policies apply to all members, while being outside gives Serbia a little bit more freedom to decide on its trade and investment policies.
Foreign direct investment, Serbia attracts a lot of that. Does the country provide significant competition, in your opinion, to, say, a country like here in Poland, and especially is concerning the region in general?
Well, I think there are differences. So being in the EU offers additional, maybe not necessarily clearly visible benefits, but being in the EU offers the benefit of the same legislation, the same standards, in the end, almost barrier-less trade and investment and flow of people. So here, Serbia cannot really compete with other EU members. The other thing that the EU membership offers is also a certain rule of law and predictability, and also the law being the same across the whole EU bloc. So that's also a thing that Serbia doesn't have. Where it is a competitor, it's probably for countries that are still on the lower scale of income and cost. So here, Serbia may be competition. So that's countries also in the Balkan region, maybe more to the east. But otherwise, it attracts different investors. These are more focused on heavier industry, also intermediate industry, and not as high tech as countries, say, in CE, or even countries in Spain or Italy or Portugal. So there is a difference in mix, and say maybe the mix that is more resembling what CE received, let's say, 15 years ago, but probably not what it's receiving right now.
Now, concerning Russia and sanctions imposed on Russia and Belarus to some extent, is Serbia being used to evade these sanctions? Are there companies from, say, Belarus or Russia that are using Serbia as kind of a front?
Well, that is a difficult question that only specialists in this area can really answer. But of course, being outside of the EU means that Serbia does not have to impose sanctions, just like, say, Turkey did not. And also some of the countries in the EU also got carve-outs from some of the restrictions because of the crucial imports of certain commodities. Of course, this focus on the, let's say, East, and I wouldn't say so much also Russia, but also Serbia has been relatively building strong links with other countries like China. This is one of them absolutely major foreign direct investors in the country, or even United Arab Emirates, while also having its eye on the EU. So being a little bit torn between these two sides complicates its perception and the future, and as we said, also the attractiveness to some of the investors, and always calls into question the ultimate policy direction of the country. But we have to reflect that this also reflects what the views of the country and the chosen path for now.
Does Serbia want to be a kind of a low regulation country near a free trade area, some kind of Singapore on the Danube?
I think many countries have followed that dream. And as we know that a modern economy cannot be absolutely a very low regulation economy. As we go up in complexity of production, fortunately or unfortunately, the regulation increases. But I think many countries are hoping to be this place where can serve as a trading hub. And for now, within its capacity and constraints, Serbia has managed to attract a lot of foreign direct investment. But as I said, this is still more on the industrial side rather than highly sophisticated, high technology or high services industry, which tends to be the domain still of the more advanced economies in the EU or just on the edge of the EU, like the UK.
Let's talk about Rio Tinto, lithium mines, Stellantis, EVs, electrical vehicle factory. Does Serbia realistically think it can become, say, an EV superpower?
I think it will be hard to challenge China to be an EV superpower right now, given the massive capacity that the country built in it, and also huge investments in other countries in Europe, especially Hungary. But definitely Serbia has discovered substantial lithium deposits, and these can be used to boost exports of the country and help with closing the current account deficit and repay some of the inflows that came to the country. So that's absolutely important and can provide long-term export revenues for years or decades to come, of course, depending on technology. But this is one of the areas where the country is very hopeful. But as I said before, a lot of the investments that came to Serbia, aside from infrastructure, but also coming into industry and mining, carries certain environmental costs. And you saw that there have been protests against building that mine. As we see across other countries, a lot of protests against new investments that can damage the environment. So Serbia will have to balance carefully the needs for the future, needs of the country, its natural resources, with the ways it wants to benefit from these resources without damaging the environment.
What does Serbia get from its relationship with China? Even though they have a free trade agreement, trade with China is just a fraction of what it is with the European Union.
Yes, that's a very good illustration of this focus on both the East and the West. China is a very large investor in Serbia. So that provides substantial inflows into the country, the necessary capital, the necessary know-how. And as for any other foreign direct investor, be it from any other country or let's say in other countries in the region, foreign direct investors want to gain a foothold in an important market. So attracting capital is one of the objectives of any government that needs to upgrade the productive capacity of the country, and that really benefits both sides.
Looking at this really good, positive economic growth that Serbia is experiencing and also taking into account all the good macroeconomic indicators, does Serbia even need to join the EU at this point to develop? I mean, wages have increased in Serbia last year 15% year on year.
As I said before, there are no other benefits of being within the EU. And with that comes also attractiveness of the country as a market and also as a place to live. But ultimately, the decision is really with the citizens of Serbia and the voters and then the government.
Okay, well, Magdalena Polan, thank you very much for being my guest today and explaining the dynamics of the Serbian economy. We very much appreciate it. Thank you. And that concludes this edition of The Bottom Line. Thank you for joining us. And of course, you can always check us out on YouTube, tvpworld.com, and on X. See you next time. Goodbye.